two of the most divisive cameras in recent internet history. When both were announced, the heavens opened and the gnawing and gnashing of internet videos commenced, leading you to think that these were the lowest of the low, the gnarliest of the gnarly, the cameras that the internet absolutely loves to hate. But what about now? They're kind of okay, I guess. The Canon EOS R and the Canon M50 both are actually pretty phenomenal for making online content. So the real question comes down to, is the EOS R worth like almost 5 times as much camera with kit lens prices? Let's find out. What's up everyone, I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Well, normally we've got a why pay twice as much video, but today in honor of the 4th of July, we're recording this on the 4th if you didn't know, we're doubling it to 4.5-ish times as much. The EOS R is Canon's current flagship mirrorless camera. It has a 30 megapixel full frame CMOS sensor, can record up to 4K 30 frames per second, has access to Canon's log profile, or it's called C-Log, has Canon's eye detection version of its dual pixel autofocus, has a flip screen, and huge batteries. But those features come with a price where the version with the kit lens is $2,899. Ouch. The M50, on the other hand, isn't technically Canon's APS-C mirrorless flagship, but we all treat it like that because it has the best features and specs. Weird that. It has a 24 megapixel APS-C CMOS sensor, can record up to 4K 24 frames per second, has access to Canon's standard picture profiles, it does have dual pixel autofocus but only the face tracking kind, and it also has a flip screen, and it has the smaller batteries. But that's probably because it's one of the smallest cameras ever made. I mean, this thing's so tiny. Boom! Record time specs overview complete. And to celebrate, let's swap these two cameras out to be the A cameras and the B cameras for the rest of the video. Ready? Mission accomplished. And since I don't normally get to do this because we're always trying out new cameras, these two are using the exact same picture profile, so hopefully we're actually going to get some matching looking footage today. I'm actually pretty excited to see how it turns out. Now that we've got the two cameras set up, it might be easy to say, well, hey Everyday Dad, this is a totally unfair comparison. One's 5 times more, so obviously it's better, right? Well, I would agree that I do think the EOS R is the better camera, but it's not as big of a gap as you might think. Like, the M50 might be throwing some punches today. I consider 4 main topics about a camera when I give my opinion about it, because yes, we could absolutely dive into every single spec and feature on these cameras until we are all bored, and honestly, I'm bored right now just thinking about making a video like that. Ugh. What I like to do is I think of the 4 main things that someone really needs the camera to accomplish if you want to use these tools to create your own online content, and I base these over 2 years of creating my own videos. We've been doing this a while. These categories are video quality, ease of use, fiddliness, and the ecosystem. That's an easy segue into the first category, video quality, because for the last few minutes, you've been seeing the video quality out of both and the audio quality that the EOS R can accomplish. And honestly, the real big difference here is going to be video quality. And I know that sounds like a common sense thing. Of course, the image quality between two cameras is the biggest difference, right? But normally on the channel, we have different brands or even styles of camera, so sometimes there are very big differences in the handling or menus or just the overall ecosystem. But here, they're very similar but different at the same time. And yes, that's a good thing, by the way. So image quality is absolutely where we will see the biggest difference. When I said earlier that the two cameras can record in up to 4K, they both actually have a couple of handicaps in recording in that mode. The EOS R gains a 1.8 times crop on top of its full frame sensor, so an 18mm lens would end up being a 32-ish millimeter lens. The M50 also gains an additional crop, but it already has a 1.5 times APS-C crop, so you wind up with a 2.5 times crop, ending up with that same 18mm lens being a 46mm, darn near a 50mm lens, which is pretty nuts when you consider an 18mm is supposed to be like a super wide angle, you know, and 50mm is pretty much a standard focal length. Plus, it can only record that 4K in 24 frames per second. Also, where the EOS R retains the ability to have Canon's famous dual pixel autofocus in 4K, the M50 loses that and reverts back to Canon's contrast-based autofocus for its 4K, which it's terrible. it's pretty bad. But besides the crops and the autofocus, if you are going to use these as 1080p cameras, they actually work pretty darn well. Now, I do think that the 1080p coming out of the EOS R is literally the best 1080p I've ever gotten out of a camera. I mean, it has totally broken me of my snobbery around 4K. Now, I normally record everything in 4K. The beginning of this video was recorded on the Z6 at 4K, and I record in that mode and I let the YouTube compression system deliver to you how you want to see it. But the 1080p on the EOS R is nice and sharp. It has a good enough dynamic range for what I do, and it has all of the priority modes that might be missing from the M50. It's missing shutter and aperture priority in video mode. Like, it's so good. We're currently recording in 1080p, and I think it looks amazing. Plus, it's much easier to handle both editing-wise and uploading in 1080p than trying to do 4K everything. 4K is actually kind of a pain in the butt. That's not to say the 1080p on the M50 is bad by any stretch of the imagination. It's not. All the B-roll you've seen so far in this video is taken with both cameras using this Sigma 18-35 lens is the same across the same, so it's the same crop. But the M50 does show its less capable sensor technology, where I do find the 1080p to be a bit muddier, and while it definitely works in a pinch, I absolutely, and should rightly think so for the price difference, the actual image coming out of the R is much better. Something else both cameras have in common is the great microphone in jack to go with that image quality. This allows for much better production values because, the audio is good. Audio has to be good, right? Because it's the most important. Will I say these have the best preamps in the world? No, they are not at Panasonic levels, but I do think they are totally usable. I mean, you've been hearing the quality using a Rode VideoMic Pro Plus with the EOS R the whole time. I mean, it sounds perfectly usable for me. But let's throw all this together and hop outside real quick for a not vlogging outdoor video and fiddliness test. See you out there. And welcome to the outdoor fiddliness / not vlogging test. Now, we are doing this on the two separate cameras differently this time because I do want to use the same focal length and it's a little tighter than vlogging can do. So yeah, so this is the M50, this is the video quality, the audio, everything that you can get out of the Canon M50 with the 22mm f2 lens that's like that big. But let's talk about fiddliness really quick while we got the camera out here. Now, both of these cameras are insanely not fiddly to use. There's a couple of things that I look for in fiddliness, right? Flip screens, which it's got, great autofocus, which it's got, and stabilization, which it doesn't really have any kind of in-body image stabilization, but it does have electronic image stabilization, which I'll put a clip here of me doing an earlier vlogging test, which, I mean, it doesn't work terribly, but it works pretty well. So yeah, when it comes to fiddliness, when it comes to the outdoor video quality, this is what you can see. And look, I just like that I'm not necessarily trapped to a camera. That's the one thing about Panasonic cameras that I don't necessarily like, is you can tap to focus on yourself and then you're good, but you can only like do this. If you want to like, hey, look at me over here, or around here, or over here and around. You can't just do that with your camera. So unfortunately, Canon still wins that. Okay, let's switch to the EOS R. There we go, now we are on the EOS R. We're shooting 1080p with both cameras, but I do really think the 1080p coming out of the EOS R is fantastic. And for reference, we're using the 35mm RF lens, which is a 1.8, so it might be a little bit blurrier of a background. But again, the Canon EOS R is very much like the M50, except it's bigger, it's better, and it just has a little more functionality to it. So right now we're just shooting in a regular picture profile. We're shooting the exact same picture profile that we shot with the M50. Use the exact same everything, so you can see the difference. But yeah, it also has the great autofocus, the great flip screen. It also has the electronic image stabilization, which again, but at least it works. So when it comes to fiddliness or vlogging or ease of use, the two cameras are darn near identical. It's really the image quality that will separate them. But it is, I mean, it's not, the camera's not foggy, but it is so humid out here right now. So I'm gonna hop back inside because I'm starting to sweat and it's like 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, see you back in there. Back inside. Geez, summer is always the worst. We got mosquitoes and it's too darn hot out there. So we've seen the image quality and now we know how fiddly the cameras are. Again, almost not at all. I mean, literally the best function of a Canon camera is how easy it is to use. So let's say you've decided to buy one of these cameras. What do their ecosystems look like? This is kind of weird because both have their own lens lineup, but you're just gonna end up using the same lenses on both cameras anyway. Like, we use this lens for all of the B-roll today, so. The M50 uses Canon's M mount, but while it's an older lens, I mean, these days it is, it doesn't really have that many lenses for it, so you'll end up either using the Canon EF to EFM adapter, or one of those speed boosters to use Canon EF or EFS lenses. And without too much repetition here, the EOS R uses Canon's brand new RF mount, which does have some straight up amazing glass, but it's not fully fleshed out yet either, so chances are you'll again be using the EF that's up there, the EF to RF adapter, and use these same lenses. I mean, all of that waffling aside, I'm a known waffler by the way, if I had to pick one of the cameras on straight ecosystem alone, it would probably be the EOS R. I think all of the R&D from Canon will now be focused on the RF mount, and that's where the exciting lenses will come from in the future. I mean, that's where I would invest my own personal money. But all that jazz later, so what, right? Is the EOS R worth 5 times the price of the Canon M50 for the online content creator? Honestly, for straight up YouTube video creation, probably not. If you're going to be adapting the same lenses and shooting in 1080p anyway, the differences aren't really all that striking, especially once you consider like online compression systems and what they will do to your overall video. But if you do more than just make YouTube videos, like if you want to post on Instagram or you want to do more photography stuff, the EOS R is like a combination pro level stills camera with an APS-C video camera like thrown into the mix and mushed all together. The 4K 10-bit external is really nice, the C-Log built-in is really nice, and the camera feels amazing. I think it's the better all-in-one camera package, but again, strictly YouTube video stuff, the M50 is like the smallest camera ever made, and it's probably the best starting point for anybody that wants to create these kind of videos. The M50 is definitely worth the money. The EOS R for straight video, maybe not. Thanks for watching.